It has been said that the book of Revelation is the sequel to the book of Genesis. The two books together, bounding all history and bounding all of God's revelations to mankind. They constitute the Alpha and the Omega of God's written word, the book of beginnings and the book of unveilings. Genesis and Revelation are the bookends of the Bible. Genesis literally means beginnings. Revelation, actually the revelation of Jesus Christ, is the last book in the 66 books of the Bible. There are 50 chapters in Genesis and 22 in Revelation for a total of 72 chapters. Now this study that we're going to look at today is concerned with just 7 of those 72 chapters. The first 3 chapters in Genesis and the last 4 chapters in Revelation. And we see in these 7 chapters that there are at least 15 compelling contrasts. Now we may not get to all 15 of these today, but I want us to look at as many of these as we can. In Genesis 1 and verse 1, we read where God created the heavens and the earth. But then in Revelation 21 and verse 1, we see the first heaven and the first earth passing away. In Genesis 1 and verse 5, the darkness was called night. But in Revelation 22 and verse 5, we see there will be no night there, because the Lord God gives them light. In Genesis 1 and verse 10, God called the gathered waters seas. But in Revelation 21:1, we'll be told there was no longer any sea. In Genesis 1:16, the greater light, or the sun, governed the day, and the lesser light, or the moon, governed the night. But in Revelation 21:23, the city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. In Genesis 2 and verse 10, a river watering the garden flowed from Eden. But in Revelation 22 and verse 1, the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowed from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In Genesis 2:24, we see the marriage of the first Adam to Eve. And in Revelation 21 and verse 2, we see the marriage of the second Adam, or Christ, to the church, pictured as being prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. In Genesis 3 and verse 1, we see the appearance of the serpent, or Satan. But in Revelation 20 and verse 10, the devil was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast had been thrown, where they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. In Genesis 3:6, we see the beginning of sin. But in Revelation 21, verses 25 and 27, we see the end of sin. For on no day will the gates ever be closed in heaven, and nothing impure, nothing sinful, will ever enter into it. In Genesis 3, verses 14 through 19, we see a triple curse being pronounced. But in Revelation 22 and verse 3, we see no longer will there be any curse. In Genesis 3:15, the doom of the serpent is pronounced. And in Revelation 20 and verse 10, the doom of the serpent is executed when he's cast into the lake of fire. In Genesis 3:15, the promised Redeemer, the seed of woman, is prophesied. And in Revelation 20 verses 4 through 6, the victorious Redeemer, Christ, is pictured as reigning along with his martyrs. In Genesis 3:16, pain and suffering enter into the world. But in Revelation 21 and verse 4, we see where God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more pain. In Genesis 3:19, we see the entrance of death, but Revelation 21:4 says there will be no more death. Genesis 3:24, we see those first 2 individuals, Adam and Eve. Once they had sinned, they were banished from the Garden of Eden. But in Revelation 21 and verse 3, mankind is restored to God. We read, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God." In Genesis 3:24, the tree of life is guarded by cherubim and a flaming sword. But in Revelation 22:14, redeemed and restored man now has the right to the tree of life and may go through the gates into the city. Now please understand that Jesus is the center of the story from Genesis 1:1 to Revelation 22 and verse 21. For by him all things were created. All things have been created through him and for him. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, by making peace through his blood that was shed on the cross. Friends, let us remember the things that God has done. Let us remember the promises that he has made. And let us notice in these great contrasts that so many of the things that came into this world because of sin are going to be taken away when this world comes to an end. When we go to that beautiful place that is called heaven, where sin will not dwell, where it cannot enter, and where God shall wipe away all tears from the eyes. Friends, we thank you for joining us for our program today, and have a blessed day.